Welcome, everybody. It's your boy, the Versace Stoner, with another episode of VSW. Thank you, everybody. It's me, Versace Stoner, alongside with the Serpolf here. Tonight, we're talking AEW Blood And Guts.
That's good shit, damn it.
It sure is, honestly, I think, in the beginning when they first started this whole Blood and Guts thing, it's definitely a dig towards the WWE and how they don't like the blood and all that, guts. And
that's what Vince called AEW before AEW had their weekly program on TNT and a conference call to his shareholders.
He did, and, I think since then it's just taken off, and, they had one last year, correct?
Well, they were about to do it in their debut in the New Jersey, New York market where the New Jersey Devils play in the Prudential Center. It was supposed to be the Inner Circle versus the Elite at the time, but the whole world went down south, as we know.
Yep. And then the match kind of changed, and it went on to something else, and so forth, and so on. So now we are getting this, and there is going to be a crowd there, correct?
50% capacity, Versace.
Wow, that's really good right now for a weekly show. I mean,
UFC this past Saturday just had the first sellout crowd of the pandemic, 100% capacity.
And where were they located at?
Orlando. Where a lot of AEW guys, such as Joey Janela and Sammy Guevara and Marco Stunt, were in the suite for the UFC fight, too.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, with everything down in Florida and wrestling being down in Florida, I'm sure a lot of these wrestling guys are going to these events. They're all fans, of course. So we're getting this Blood and Guts, 50% crowd, and it's just going to be one match show, right?
Supposedly just one match. It's a 2-hour show, but probably one match, and it's elimination 5-on-5. It's kind of like, I wonder if it's going to be similar to the War Games in either the WCW days or the Dusty Rhodes days. That's what it's based on.
That's what I'm kind of thinking, obviously the Rhodes boys, part of the booking decision, part of the creative process of AEW. Their father, great WCW legend, and came up with a lot of different things like the Stampede match and other stuff. So I'm sure they're pulling a lot from, the heritage that he left them with. And I'm looking forward to it. They bring a different style than, WWE. WCW brought a different style than WWF. And I think, this different style is what's making wrestling booming right now. It's not just, the one brand monopoly. Anywhere you look, you can find wrestling. Not just, on the major TVs. Even in the indie scenes, we're very diverse right now.
Especially the New England products we cover that have weekly television.
I mean, and it's only getting bigger and better, and the lab's going to start up with, their show, and other promotions are starting. It's really a great thing. But, so this Blood and Guts, you're going to have, what is it now? The Inner Circle versus the Pinnacle?
Pinnacle, the newly formed MJF stable with Tully Blanchard as their manager, Versace.
So they have, FTR, I take it.
FTR, Dax and Cash.
And, it's led by MJF.
You got Wardrow, obviously.
And you got Wardrow.
And Sean Spears.
And they added Sean Spears. And I think that's a good spot for Spears. He's been kind of, since debuting, he's been kind of like just lost in the shuffle and not really having a place in AEW. He's not a main eventer. He could be a mid-carder, but they don't really use him as that. I think him now in a stable will be even better.
He's been lost in the shuffle ever since basically his all-out match with Cody last year.
Yeah, so I think this will be a good spot for him. And I think the Pinnacle is going to do great things. MJF, a superstar, First Limitless Wrestling champion out in Maine, and,
he's better than us, and he knows it.
If you ever looked at any of those matches, I've watched a few. Actually, I've watched a lot, but I mean, recently I went back and watched a few of his Limitless matches. He was really good then, but, he's gotten even better since then. And it's quite amazing to see him, how he's transformed over the years. Just very, naturally born, just great wrestler. And he's only going to go further and further in this business.
One of the best people on the mic that I can think of, Versace. This early in his career, he needs no script. He knows what he's saying.
He does, and that's very hard, for such a young wrestler. It takes years to perfect these mic skills that, he has done in such a short period of time.
Oh, absolutely, Versace. As you got the rules of the Blood and Guts match is, I think it's going to be a 5-on-5 elimination match.
Okay, so then you have the inner, so you're going to have
Sammy Guevara, Pride and Powerful, Santana and Ortiz, Jake Hager, obviously the Judas Man, Chris Jericho.
So you got, and this is going to be interesting because I think in this match, they're actually the face team right now, right?
They had a huge face turn, right? Can't really say MJF turned heel because he always was a heel. Right when they were going to confront MJF outsmarted them, forming his own stable, and the lights went off and beat the shit out of the Inner Circle, and they were all about to beat the shit out of MJF. It all started the post-Revolution show when the Inner Circle, MJF, and Chris Jericho lost in Revolution in the opening match to the Young Bucks right before their heel turn joined with Kenny Omega, but they lost and nothing was going to happen, and they called for a war intermission to retreat. And that's when Sammy Guevara came back. Turns out they were pretending to have tension when they knew MJF was going to outsmart him, and they got caught in the backstage segment when he was talking to Santana and Ortiz and Jake Hager to turn on Jericho. But MJF knew he wasn't going to do that. And right when Chris Jericho said, "You're going to get the Inner Circle ass beating of a lifetime," MJF pretended to cry like the actor he is. And then the lights came off, and here comes Blanchard, FTR, Sean Spears, and Wardlow. And that's when they beat up the Inner Circle to start this whole Blood and Guts feud.
And it's been, talk about, story writing and a good storyline. I'm loving this storyline. MJF definitely should be his own leader. It was cool with him and Jericho, and but Jericho's his own leader too. So this is definitely a time for,
And Jericho got too funny as a heel. He's great as a heel, don't get me wrong. But the fans were chanting his song. They were laughing the whole time
Listen, Jericho is one of those people that, face or heel, the fans are always going to love him. Similar to The Undertaker. The Undertaker could go heel tomorrow and the fans are going to love him. And the same with Jericho. They sing his song. They laugh at his jokes. They laugh when he, has these tantrums, which are very hilarious.
And he accidentally botches the Pinnacle's name, calls him the Pineapple.
Hey. But Chris Jericho is, one of the greatest wrestlers in the last, 30 years.
Oh, no doubt. He carried the company through the Ruthless Aggression era and came back.
But even his early WCW days and his, Y2J days.
The man of 1,004 holds, Versace.
Really, I've always been a fan of Chris Jericho. And seeing him, as he's gotten older and still able to, put on an hour or 2 hour match in this case is really impressive to me.
That he always can change his character, whether it was the List character in the PG era after his Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla, from his Lion Salt gimmick in the WCW days, Versace. The fact that the Walls of Jericho is just his signature move now, because the Judas effect is his new finisher, which is basically a turning elbow. How amazing is that?
It really is. And even that, you've seen him in New Japan. Out there, he's even different, the Painmaker. And, he wears the makeup, he gets criticized, but, he goes out and puts on a great show.
He's entertaining, no matter face or hair.
Really is. And, now with, you got Pride and Glory, great tag team, very underrated in my opinion, not getting enough limelight in AEW, and hopefully now they will. They should have gold around their waist.
They were formerly known as LAX in the indie scene, including Beyond, Impact.
They were, but I definitely think, like I said, they need to be AEW tag team champs. And, I think they'll be back to where they were. I think, they came in hot and heavy, everybody loved them, and they really didn't use them that much. Not as much as they should have been used, and I think they fell off a little bit. Now they're starting to get used again. And then you got someone else that really hasn't been used too much, and that's Jake Hager. We haven't really seen many matches out of him.
Absolutely, but he's really the silent bodyguard for the Inner Circle. He's better than that Kurt Angle ripoff Jack Swagger gimmick in WWE.
He is. He reminds me of when Shawn Michaels brought in Diesel, as his bodyguard, and he kind of just stood there. Can wrestle if he has to. He's also a Bellator fighter. He's had a couple matches out there, undefeated in that. Maybe we'll see. I'm sure. We have to see something out of him within, the match. He's in it. It's all happening at the same time.
I think you're going to get a brawl between him and Wardlow because they didn't even like each other when they were in the Inner Circle.
Hey, you never know. Maybe we'll even see Hager throw in some real shoot moves. You never know. And then, you got one of my favorite wrestlers.
The best up-and-coming star in AEW is Sammy Guevara.
Sammy Guevara, people can like him, hate him, whatever they want to say about him.
Sammy.
He's super charismatic. He's very talented in the ring. He
he's
might be
great on the vlog on his YouTube series, too.
He might be young, but you know what? He has a lot to bring. And, in the years to come, he's only going to get better.
Absolutely. He wrestles in a lot of those lucha promotions in Mexico. That's how Cody scouted him. He's one of the best cruiserweights in the world. He trained in Booker T's school, too, believe it or not.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Wow, I did not know that. So he has quite the resume. And it shows, though. It shows, with his ring presence, how he speaks, his promos. He brings also some humor to it, too. And I'm not opposed to bringing humor. AEW brings humor, gets criticized, I think, a lot for their humor. More so than WWE does. And almost everything in WWE, to me, is a freaking joke.
Oh, but absolutely.
In AEW, they bring in the humor. Yes, we have funny things, with their gimmicks. You have Orange Cassidy. He's hilarious.
Oh, he's really hilarious.
You have other things that they just make light of. Even the Young Bucks make fun of things. Kenny Omega makes
like that
fun
BTE series that is Monday. They make fun of everything and everybody.
A lot of jokes are being made constantly with AEW. I don't know if all the fans really appreciate it, but I know I do. I think bringing humor into the wrestling world is fine in this case. It doesn't always have to be super serious.
The thing that AEW's done really good at is combining both humor and seriousness.
They have been, but, like I was saying, we talked on our other episode with Isana how, kayfabe is basically dead in wrestling. And so if we know it's fake, if we know these feuds aren't going to be, people aren't getting beat to hell for real, you know what I'm saying? We know, how things kind of work in the sense of, the storylines. Why not have a little fun in it? Why not bring a little humor into it? And why not, make it, something, that doesn't have to always be so serious. In a world that we live where almost everything is serious.
Way too serious, if you ask me, Versace.
I'm not saying make the whole thing a joke and a sham, but there can be some humor in it. It's fine. And
these two groups have great chemistry. They're both hilarious in their own way.
They really are. You know what? And the promos are going to cut on each other, and the way the chemistry of this match is going to flow is going to be very, 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 memorable for years to come. This episode is going to be, probably one of their best to date.
Absolutely. Right when they're about to go back on tour in a few months, according to JR, revealing to the dirt sheets that AEW is looking to go back to arenas as early as July.
Well, that's pretty good news. Especially for us. Don't we have tickets out this way?
Yeah, we actually have the Post All Out show on September 7th.
Wow, that's going to be good. So by then we should have, maybe even full capacity. Who knows? But if they start touring, I think they're going to do better. I mean, I have to say I'm a little sick of the Florida scenery.
That you and me both, it kind of hurts the edge of the show they're getting there. But my biggest problem is AEW, right before the pandemic, they were going to have the Rochester show, which you would add debuts of Brody Lee, rest in peace, and Matt Hardy in the Rochester. Then you would have had the Blood and Guts that we talked about earlier between the Elite and Inner Circle. Inner Circle is obviously heel. Boy, we missed out on possibly the biggest boom in wrestling history. And it's not AEW's fault either. It's just...
It's the way the world was, and then they couldn't do anything about it. And they had to keep up with the storylines, and they did the best they could. They had to run with their debuts. I mean, how long could they have held the debuts off for? They couldn't. They had storylines written out. And I do feel bad for AEW. I feel bad for the talent. I feel bad for everybody during this pandemic. We've all had it's been a really rough time for everybody in the world. It really sucks, I have to say. But, things are starting to look better. Especially in the wrestling world, I can see more and more things opening up. I'm seeing more, smaller shows running, inviting fans at limited capacity.
And you got wrestlers getting the ring rust off their back.
Exactly. It's going to take a little while for everybody to get back into shape, but it's going to happen soon, and everybody will be back, and I think it's going to be even better than ever. I think the fans are going to be even more supportive than, before. Because, that's what happens. When you miss something and something's not there, you tend to appreciate it more.
Crowds at sporting events or wrestling, who would ever thought we'd ever watch anything with no fans before the pandemic?
It very rarely happens. In the wrestling world, sure, they do, when they're training, there's no fans. They wrestle each other all the time. I don't know if you've ever gone to a show early. I have personally, and I've seen, they practice in the ring by themselves. There's no fans. But we don't see it. That's like almost watching a match with
That's like playing training mode on your sports video games on PS4 or Xbox One, or tutorial mode.
Kind of, yeah, basically, and it's very hard, to visualize and even think about it without fans. But we've been watching it for so long now that it's become normal. It has become almost totally normal.
I'll admit, the thing that hurts AEW is the Florida Daily's Place scenery. It's getting too boring for me.
It is, and I'm really disappointed, honestly, that Double or Nothing will not be taking place in Vegas. I think that's, one of its big selling points, that it is, that kind of gambling atmosphere.
And gambling should be a Saturday night, not a Sunday night.
Yes. That's the other thing that is a big issue for me right now with the AEW pay-per-view. I can see the last one being Sunday, fine. But listen, let me tell you something. Double or Nothing and All Out should both be Saturday night. These are big
Especially
pay-per-views.
Double or Nothing. Well, All Out kind of makes sense. Labor Day weekend, the Saturday people move in colleges or have their fantasy football drafts across the country, so I can somewhat see that. But Double or Nothing should always be on Saturday.
They should have. Well, just in general, they should differentiate them from all the other wrestling, promotions. Either, it's Saturday or Sunday. And my issue with AEW running Sunday is also the fact is eventually Vince is going to counter-program this. He definitely will, and it's going to hurt their ratings. If Vince throws a pay-per-view on a Sunday, there's going to be problems. Let's just face it, All Out. It takes place, in August?
It's Labor Day weekend.
Now, what happens if Vince decides to run SummerSlam up against it on a Sunday night?
I don't think will happen, since SummerSlam's in August, not September.
Okay, but they could easily run another show in it.
They could do an NXT takeover.
They could, or they could... If it's on a Sunday, they could run any of their pay-per-views. We've seen them run things a week later. Look at what happened with... Payback last year.
Absolutely.
And other pay-per-views that have been quick. Fastlane and WrestleMania, there wasn't much time.
Yeah, but you got WrestleMania Backlash.
That will be good. as it unfolds. I don't think it's going to be, a top-notch pay-per-view, but I think it might settle some more of the issues that happen in WrestleMania. I'm not really sure. I mean, we need to see something happen with, The Fiend and Orton and more of that, and other gaps I think are just there. But, like I said, keep AEW pay-per-views to Saturday night. Unless you're going up against a UFC fight or a big boxing match, there's really no reason to move it to Sundays. It just is not.
But the only good thing is Full Gear is always going to be a Saturday because it's the NFL season, and AEW owner Tony Khan obviously owns a NFL team, the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, but Full Gear is not one of their top shows. Dawn is, if anything, is always... Double or Nothing has always been, one of the greatest pay-per-views. I know they wanted All Out to be their flagship show, but it just hasn't been.
It always falls flat to there. What's funny, Versace, is that Double or Nothing is always not supposed to be as good as All Out. And All Out's expectations, we get so excited high, but Double or Nothing always has A-plus shows. You got the whole card, top to bottom, AEW's debut show was the best wrestling show I've ever seen since the late 90s, early 2000s.
Listen, a lot of these Double or Nothings have been better than the Manias. And those are the hard facts. If you compare the two matches by matches and just overall think, the anticipation and the excitement that happened, when Jon Moxley showed up and threw Kenny Omega off the stack of
Bret
chips.
Hart debuting the AEW World Championship.
I mean, you had some memorable moments that just blew, people away. They weren't expecting it to be that good. And it was. Yeah, yes, All Out fell flat, mostly, partly due because, Jon Moxley had suffered, the infection at the time. They had to push the title match, and all this stuff had to happen.
And last year, you got the botches with the Sedal brothers, and you got Matt Hardy almost having a career-ending injury.
You had a lot of stuff go on last year that shouldn't happen. But the Double or Nothing was amazing again.
Yeah, the Stadium Stampede. This is what Blood and Guts is kind of similar. I think that match between the Elite and Inner Circle was to make up for the Blood and Guts.
Exactly. That would have been the Blood and Guts match. I think they did something a little different because they couldn't. And they, returned the wheel a little bit. And that was a great match. If that's something that's going to be similar to what we're going to see here, I mean, obviously...
We're in for a treat.
We are. I mean, obviously it's not going to be cinematically done. Maybe parts will. Who knows if they get to the back arena.
It's supposed to be 2 red cages.
So it really is going to be like the old WCW days.
That was their intention. They did reveal the rules a little bit, not as much as they did last year before the pandemic started. But I think it's going to be somewhat similar but different to the War Games of NXT for their...
I mean, they have to do something a little bit different. Obviously, nobody can do the same. None of the promotions can do the same. Once you get one of these events and they're yours, the other one really can't do it exactly the same. But I am excited. I mean, I'm a War Games fan anyways. I've always been one, even in the old WCW days. Something about those double rings. I'm actually waiting for my NXT War Games playset to come. I actually ordered it, but yeah.
So the rules for this is 2 men enter the cage for 1 5-minute round, and then every 2 minutes another participant enters. And the match officially begins after all 10 men have entered the... So, you won't get any pinfall submissions for at least half an hour. That's why it's the only match.
Oh, I get it now.
They're going to beat the living hell out of each other.
For the first half an hour, before anybody can even go for a pin, they're just going to be beating each other. This is insanity. I mean, so already they're going to be tired, and then the match begins.
Yeah.
And then they'll start to go from there. I mean, technically this.
And here's how the rule is different compared to a steel cage match at Hell in the Cell or any NXT War Games. You know how the winning team's going to win, Versace?
How?
There is no pinfalls, no countouts,
what?
Or you can't even escape the... You have to make the opponent tap out.
Are you kidding me?
I'm not.
So it's a submission win only match elimination match, 5-on-5. Well, see, this changes things now. I mean, now you got to think, who are your top submission wrestlers? You just mentioned one person earlier with the Lion Tamer, Chris Jericho. He could make anybody in the match tap with that move, and you know that's true.
The Inner Circle does have the advantage in this type of match against the Pinnacle.
I mean, again, you got to, though, I mean,
let's got Jake Hager with the ankle lock.
You got Jake Hager with the ankle lock. You know, he's got that MMA experience. I mean, FTR are technically sound, but they're not really known for submissions. Wardlow might be able to beat you into submission, and I'm sure he can, you know, he knows some moves, but again, he's not known really. MJF, technically sound, not really known for submissions. Jericho, like you said, his early days was known for that Lion Tamer.
He still uses the Walls of Jericho, but it's a signature move rather than a finisher.
Well, he will be using it, you know, I'm sure we'll be seeing it.
But before we go, who do you think's going to win this?
Well, after you just mentioned that, I'm going to give this to the Inner Circle. I think that, like you said, they have the upper edge between Jericho and Hager. You know, they could really do a lot of damage in this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. But I'm going to have to go with a twist, and I think the Pinnacle's going to win because I don't think they would debut a new faction in the way it did post-Revolution just to have them lose, and they really want to make them very unlikable, and they want to make the Inner Circle even more likable than they already are. But I obviously think it's going to be MJF tapping out Sammy Guevara, trying to build the one-on-one with them, because besides Jericho and MJF, the biggest rivalry with everybody is MJF and Sammy Guevara, because he really bullied Sammy when he joined the Inner Circle after beating Jericho at Full Gear.
And that's kind of exciting, though, because those two are probably the best. I mean, yes, Jericho's great on the mic. He's a legend. But out of the new era of people and the people they're trying to push, you know, Sammy and MJF are probably two of the top on the mic right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good feud. And that feud could even happen, you know, for a mid-card title eventually down the line, or even the world title down the line.
Absolutely.
You know, Omega can't hold it forever.
Or the Impact World title.
No, that's another thing. You know, that was some big news in the world last night. You know, Kenny Omega beating Richie Swann to become, you know, both champion. He's Impact and AEW World Champion. That's impressive. And I don't know how they're going to pull this off. You know, you got Don Callis and, you know, Kenny Omega. You got the AEW. You got, I don't know where he's going to defend which title and when. Will he defend the Impact title in AEW? I mean, could somebody on there win that? Who knows how this is going to even play out. This is kind of all new territory, really, for AEW and for Impact.
If everything's exciting now, wait till they go back to arenas.
I mean,
and
we're going to
finally got NXT off Wednesday nights.
I mean, if they start to do house shows by any chance like they did Mania Weekend, I mean, will we see super shows kind of similar to what, like, Ring of Honor and New Japan did years ago, where they would have the combined talent go to a house show or, you know, do a super show? Yeah. Like they did out in New York. We might start to see that with fans, and that's, you know, that would be great. Great for Impact for sure, as, you know, AEW I think is still the superior product right now. But Impact has some great stars. You got the Good Brothers. You know, you got EC3. You got a bunch of people in Impact that can make a difference.
You got Matt Cardona, Brian Myers.
You can have great fantasy matches with both rosters. You know, you imagine Matt Cardona and Myers against, you know, the Young Bucks or FTR. You can have these dream matches right now that couldn't take place, you know, a year or two ago.
You even could have Jake something.
That's, you know, would be amazing. Chris Bay. All these guys, you know, that are on there, we can see them now on AEW. You can see them on TNT. It's great exposure for everybody involved. I'm really excited about the merge kind of thing happening. I really think that's big for the business. It's big for indie wrestling. It's big for, major wrestling. It just goes to show you the companies can work together. It doesn't have to be, everybody against everybody. It's wrestling. Everybody can win this thing together.
Of course, Versace, but before we sign out, I am really excited for what wrestling has in store, and I cannot wait for Blood and Guts. It used to be how I used to get so excited for Hell in a Cell feeling when before they had their own pay-per-view as Hell in a Cell. I love that Blood and Guts is during a Dynamite, and it revolves around that and no other matches. It'll be unique. There's never been a program where it's just one match in any WWE, ECW, WCW.
Nope. This is going to show, just how good the talent of AEW are to be able to carry on a match for that long, and, just to keep the audience's attention for that long and with one match. It's going to be really something special. What is it? In 2 weeks, is it?
No, 9 days, Wednesday, May 5th. You got it right before the NBA and NHL playoffs starting, and they're unopposed with NXT, so maybe they outdraw Raw or come close to it.
Hey,
imagine how amazing that would be.
Anything is possible right now in the world of wrestling. So, yeah, definitely, we'll be watching that. We'll do a full review of that, too, after. So, definitely tune in for that. I thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you. Get ready for some Blood and Guts.
Coming your way.
The Sable out.
Versace Stunner out.